Hello YouTube, Mike Kohanim here. Today I'm going to take a break from talking about Gladiator Beasts and talk about something different. I'm going to talk about the 16 hours I played Rush Duel last Friday when I took off from work for the World Championship qualifier for Duel Links. And I'm going to talk about what I learned, both about my effort to qualify for the World Championship by doing that, and what I learned about Rush Duels in general and the current Rush Duel format. For those who don't know, the World Championship qualifier for Duel Links Rush Duel, Duel Links Speed Duel, and Master Duel are all pretty similar, with the exception of Master Duel having a team component as well. But the easiest way to qualify for these tournaments is, and easy in quotes, is by being first in your region in the World Championship qualifier, which happens over the summer, which for Duel Links Rush Duel was this past weekend. Now, they have certain tournaments throughout the year where you can be first in the world to qualify to gain that invitation to the World Championship, which is a feat that I have never attempted and probably never will attempt, as it is significantly harder. I had been enjoying the recent Rush Duel format, or the current Rush Duel format, so I wanted to give this a shot. I had always wanted to attempt the grind to try to get first place in North America, to hopefully one day make it back as a competitor at the World Championship, as I competed in the TCG World Championship in 2009, and obviously I would never be able to do that if I don't at least try. But to do that, you really have to be fully committed to the weekend, to dedicating your time to doing it, because there's no limit on the number of games you can play. For each game you win, you get at least 1,000 duel points. For each game you lose, you'll lose a range of points, but it's typically about 1,000. So overall, as long as you have a positive win percentage, the more games you play, the higher your points will be, and the person with the most points in the region is the one who will get that invitation to the World Championship, which is in Paris this year. There's only one invitation for North America, which is the region I'm in. For Rush Duel, I believe it's 2 invitations for Speed Duel next weekend, and I'm not exactly sure how it works for Master Duel. So it's not easy, but my observation from Rush Duel this past weekend is actually that North America was probably one of the easier regions with the lower scoring points. That said, I don't think I had adequately prepared, so I'm hoping that you can learn from my mistakes of what I learned over the course of 16 hours. I woke up 6 a.m. I didn't set an alarm. I just happened to wake up. And as soon as I woke up, I grabbed my phone and started the first game. And then I pretty much played through to 10 p.m. on that Friday. And at the end of the day, I was in about 12th place for North America. I think it was 12th place for North America. I peaked at 5th place in North America after about, I think it was 8 hours of playing in Friday afternoon. But both at that point and at the end of the day, I thought my score was too low, and I was just too many points behind first place, which is really the only place that matters, because it's the only place that gets invited, barring a pass down of an invitation from someone like Quantum Cubes, who was in the top 10 and is already qualified for the World Championship. But really, you need to come in first place. Other than that, the only prizes are cosmetic items. You can get special processing for your cards, which are cool, but it's not what I was after. So I went into it with what I was confident was the best deck in the metagame, which was the Light Galaxy deck using the Galactica Fusion Draw skill, which just seemed leagues better than every other deck in the metagame. That said, I can honestly say I think my experience in the metagame, the Rush Duel metagame, is, I think I have less hours of gameplay in the entire metagame since this deck was released than the 16 hours I did on Friday. And I think that was my first mistake. So while I think it was pretty clear what the best deck was, I had an extremely suboptimal build. And there was I think there was 1 hour in particular where after playing for like 1 full hour, I think my rating actually dropped between 1 and 2,000 points, and that's not the direction you want to be in when you're trying to climb the ranks. And I think that was definitely discouraging. And as I was playing, I modified my deck, and I learned a lot about the format and the way the deck plays. So I did make a lot of changes to the deck. Um, at Friday around 10 p.m., when I was just outside of the top 10 of North America, I decided I'm just going to play casually. I think I'm too far behind. But I made a bunch of changes to the deck. I played casually Saturday morning. I played a bunch of games, but didn't, dedicate the day to it. If I needed to do something, I did it outside of the game. And my win rate was a lot higher with the changes I had made to the deck. And I think that an important thing to keep in mind is, while you do need to adapt when you're playing, it's certainly better to have that ironed out beforehand. So I think if I reattempt this next year, I'm going to try to get a lot more hours of duels in before I actually start the 72-hour grind, because the event runs from Friday through Sunday night. Technically, I think it's Monday at 1 a.m., minus whatever hours I sleep. I thought if I played a lot in like the weeks leading into it, I might get even more burnt out, which is possible, because I'll be honest, when I played all day Friday, it went fast. It did not feel like I was on a 16-hour grind, and just before I knew it, it was 10 p.m. So, I mean, that was kind of wild. So that was kind of cool. And so that's what I learned about the tournament. Another thing that was kind of surprising to me, especially in North America, is I don't think there are that many players attempting this grind for first place. Because I think at the end of the weekend, after playing literally just a few games on Sunday, playing pretty casually on Saturday, where I had a really good streak that increased my rating, and playing all day Friday, I think I ended up, last I checked on Sunday, late Sunday night, I was 19th place in North America. So that could have changed a little bit. But if there were a lot of people who were really going for the 3 days straight, I think I would have dropped significantly. And interestingly, if you actually look at the points of the players in North America, they peak significantly lower than in other regions, which I find interesting, particularly Europe and Asia. And also, if you look at the metagame, every single region except for North America was overrun with Galaxy decks, whereas North America still had some of the Seven's Road Magician decks, which I think was just so clearly inferior. I was surprised that top players were attempting to use it. I think it's a fun deck, and I think the cards that it generates with the skill are incredible, but the power of the cards are just so much weaker than in the Galaxy decks. That was kind of interesting as well to discover. So even though I did not succeed, I am glad I attempted it. I wish I held in there and maybe committed to the grind on Saturday as well, just because things turned around as I made changes to the deck. But I do think I was too far behind, so I enjoyed the Sunday with my family, and I kind of accepted that I was not going to be able to qualify based on my performance from Friday. But I will say a lot of the names in the top 10 did change from Friday to Saturday to Sunday, so I don't know that it really necessarily is too late when you're behind by that many points. So that's what I learned about the tournament itself. Now I'll talk about what I learned about Rush Duels. If you're unfamiliar with Rush Duels, it's similar to Speed Duels, except you draw up to 5 cards in hand every turn, or draw 1 card if you already have 5 in your hand, and you get any number of normal summons per turn, and start with 6,000 life points. That's the gist of it. The deck the build of the deck I was playing was completely wrong. I really included a bunch of cards. I'm like, these are really good cards. I need them in my deck. And they just didn't really have the synergy with the Light Galaxy deck, that the streamlined version of the deck had that was significantly better. I'll talk about some of the changes I made and the overall strategy of the deck that my original card choices kind of hindered. So if you were just interested in the qualifying for World Championship portion of this video, because you want to attempt it in either Master Duel or Speed Duel or Rush Duel next year, that was the previous part of the video. So after 16 hours of gameplay, this is the version of the deck that I was using. Some of the big... I actually made a lot of changes throughout the tournament to this deck that I wish I had ironed out earlier. One of those big changes is the use of negate attack. Initially, I was using compulsory evacuation device as my legend trap card, which allowed me to use Rice Terrace Crisis as well, since that's limited one but not legend. I think the two typically do go hand in hand. But as I began to play, I realized it became incredibly obvious when your opponent had compulsory evacuation device, which really made it a lot weaker than I thought it was. I also realized it was less impactful because a lot of times you would activate it and you'd still lose on that turn, whereas that is never true of negate attack. And I also realized the same of Rice Crisis Terrace, where it was fairly common you'd activate it and still lose on that turn, especially in the mirror match. So negate attack was the clear winner here. There's no doubt in my mind it's the better choice for this deck, and I wish I had known that sooner. Some of the other big changes, the two biggest changes I made is the 3 copies of Trans Am Laika and 3 copies of Star Tralio. When I first built this deck, I think I was playing 1 copy of Laika and 1 copy of Tralio. That was awful. That was completely incorrect. I think I was just lacking a fundamental understanding of how this deck works. When I was first using this deck, I was basically using the Space Fusion Extra Plasma to clear back rows, kind of grinding card advantage, getting rid of the opponent's cards if they had back rows, and just trying to win that way and eventually beat them when they had fewer cards to work with on their turn, to try to retaliate on the next turn to end the duel. That's the completely wrong approach for this deck. So many decks right now can just generate cards out of virtually nowhere. And a lot of the back row cards that you destroy with Space Fusion Extra Plasma are completely irrelevant. So few of them actually matter on your turn. It's basically just negate attack. In this deck, it's negate attack and buffered slime, but buffered slime is not even relevant if you're playing, because you can play around it. You attack with Eternal Galactic Oblivion, level 9 monster, they can't buffered slime. So the way the deck works, it doesn't even care about buffered slime. So it's basically just negate attack. You have Executee Riding, which is another card that seems like an incredible card. In my early version of the deck, I played this card. This card did almost nothing in this deck. Even when you successfully activated it, it had fairly little impact. It was also situational in that you had to have 2 monsters on the field to play it, which is kind of counterproductive when you want to empty your hand every turn. So I played this in the Asana Bill Dragon Worm deck, and it was incredible in there as a 3-of, even. But in this deck, it just did not work, which was a fallacy I fell into, where I'm like, I only have 2 limited 3 cards in my deck. Let me play a 3rd because I can. That was also the wrong attitude, because in my early versions of the deck, I pretty much forced myself to play a 3rd limited 3 card because they are powerful. So I played initially Executee Riding. After realizing Executee Riding was just not good in this build of the deck, or in this deck in general, I swapped it out for Ghost Cyclone, which was even worse. This card was even worse. Pretty much never got it first turn going second, which is really when you want to draw it. And then it's so hard to, 1, not have a monster on your field so that you're able to activate it later in the duel. Have 3 or fewer monsters in the graveyard when your deck's purpose is to basically load up the graveyard with Galactiara Eve and stuff like Star Tralio, and pretty much anything that is your goal, to load up the graveyard to make this guy bigger. And like I mentioned before, back rows were mostly irrelevant. Negate attack was pretty much the only one that mattered. So typically you were hitting a low impact card that the opponent set just because they wanted to replace their hand. So this card really was just terrible when I put it in the deck. And that's another thing. Like, I wish I had tested it sooner and discovered that. Early versions of the deck as well. I think I was playing like one copy of Trans Am Laika and the Tralio, not realize, and maybe one Tralio or no Tralio initially, not realizing that Eternal Galactic Oblivion can actually just beat your opponent out of nowhere, even when your graveyard's not that big. And it took me a while to realize that pretty much every turn you should be calculating what this guy's attack will be if you summon it, and seeing if you can kill your opponent as a result. Earlier in the event, I was pretty much waiting for my deck to get really small before I even thought about summoning him. And that was totally wrong. Like, just trying to destroy their cards and keep tempo until you get to the late game and are able to summon him was completely wrong, because you can summon him earlier on and just beat your opponent. And that's where this card came in as well. Trans Am Laika lets you do a little bit of piercing damage early on, so that it's that much easier to attack with Eternal Galactic Oblivion and just beat your opponent. So I think I had a lot wrong on Friday morning, which I think cost me quite a few points, which I think is the main reason I was so far behind first place on Friday afternoon and Friday night. Even when I peaked at 5th place in North America, I was still far behind first place. So I have to think first place had it all figured out before the weekend started, which would be ideal, which I would recommend if you attempt this. One of the other things I learned is that my monster count was way too low. For a deck that really just wants to load up the graveyard to win with Eternal Galactic Oblivion, I needed more monsters in the deck, which means I needed to stop playing all these tech cards that I really liked because I thought they were powerful, and just focus on getting monsters into the graveyard and winning with Eternal Galactic Oblivion. And once I shifted my kind of perception of how the deck works and my overall strategy, I realized I was pretty much winning with Eternal Galactic Oblivion almost every game. Because this, at the end of the day, this is how the deck wins if you're playing it correctly. And I'm fairly confident in that now after playing for 16 hours. Probably took me 14 hours to realize that. But I'm pretty sure of it. And then, if you read a card like Compulsory Evacuation Device that your opponent has face down, you're able to go into Extra Plasma to try to clear it, or basically force them to clear it or risk it being destroyed, and then subsequently go into Summon Galactic Oblivion and Fusion Summon Eternal Galactic Oblivion to defeat them after they've already used the Compulsory Evacuation Device. And then, a lot of games actually came down to negate attack, because you can't read the negate attack because it doesn't prompt an activation from the player until it's too late to stop or too late to destroy, because it's not until the attack is declared. Now, if your opponent has it face down, you can read the activation window if they save it, which is a reason it often does not get saved, because a lot of times if you hold on to it, the opponent will realize after every attack it's prompting them to do something, and they might think it's probably negate attack. If you start with a level 9 monster and it's prompting them to do something, then they'll certainly realize you have negate attack, because Buffered Slime can't be activated. So there was a lot more depth and reads, and even just general strategy of the deck that I wish I had known. But yeah, it's a really interesting Rush Duel format, even though I think this deck is clearly the best deck. The Dark Galaxy deck is pretty powerful too. I do like that deck a lot. I like that deck also because the skill is weaker, but the cards are stronger, so I really do like that. But this one has insane cards and an insane skill. I will say it is frustrating Constantly going first and not being able to use the skill when you have Galactica Oblivion, or going second and not drawing Galactica Oblivion, so that if you use the skill, you can't get the search effect with it, which is really the main strength of the skill. But that's something you just have to shake off when it happens. I knew that going in, that you were going to get, I was going to get unlucky in some games, and try not to let it put me on tilt. But at the end of the day, I made a lot of errors early on. I made some play errors as well. There was a game I lost because I forgot to set negate attack. I was just going too fast. In my head, I had set it. In reality, it was in my hand, and it just cost me the game because I got OTK'd by the Dark Galaxy deck that typically does not have a lot of ways to destroy the back row. Another card I played. Another card I did play in my deck, Universal Storm, was in my early version of the deck. I think I played 2 or maybe even 3 copies starting out on Friday. It was terrible. It just decreased the monster count. It was unreliable to draw when you actually needed it. And like I said, there just weren't enough high-impact back rows that mattered in a deck that's trying to OTK the opponent. So, again, this was my final version of the deck. I'm fairly confident this is a best version of the deck after 16 hours of play. I think that qualifies me to say something about what an ideal build looks like. If you have a differing opinion and have just as much experience playing with the deck, let me know. I'm curious if you think I'm off point on something. But I think as my attitude shifted about how to play the deck and the cards to include, my win rate went up as well. So I'm pretty confident in that. Oh, this card as well, Galactiara Fuse Eve. I think knowing when to summon this and kind of like wall up was also kind of important. And it didn't take me that long to get used to that, but it did take me a little bit to realize, like, sometimes you don't want to use this card's effect on your first turn. You'd rather just fusion summon Fuse Eve and wall up. So, I mean, I learned a lot as I went, and I wish I learned a lot before I started. So I just wanted to make a discussion video so that you'd get the quick benefit of my 16 hours of play. If you like discussion videos like these, I'd really appreciate it if you like the video on YouTube and subscribe to my channel. I will try to keep the YouTube channel Gladiator Beast focused, but if the discussion videos get a good reaction, I'll try to upload more like these as well. I do plan to attempt the Speed Duel WCS qualifier this coming weekend as well. I took off from work on Friday to start that, but I do have a couple of obligations that will take me out of it for a couple hours, so I don't know if that's going to be too big of a hindrance to overcome. But I am going to play Shaddolls, which I am very confident is the best deck of the format, although I'm hoping to get a little more practice with the deck before Friday, just so that I can be faster with it. I played Shadow about a year ago before the new support, and the deck has changed a little bit since then, because they got Apgalone and a better skill, and a couple of other cards as well that changed the way it plays. But it is a slow deck, so it takes long to do the plays sometimes, so I really want to speed up with it, so that I don't time out, as I have done in ranked duels. So that's my plan for the weekend. So if you like this video, again, I'd really appreciate a like, and if you subscribed. Thank you.